My long-awaited book, Astrology Realized, is finally available and waiting for you at Amazon and other online retailers. Get one for you, your loved one, or as a gift. All part of your fabulous journey to understanding astrology. Enjoy. Hello, fabulous friends and fans. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is Synchronicity, and this is your moment of synchronicity. I'm here with Chris Brennan. Now, Chris Brennan is really respected in the astrological world for his research into ancient astrology and so much more. Definitely one of the more scientifically minded of our community and has done a lot of media that I've seen and enjoyed very much. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Nadiya.
So tell me a little bit about the research element. Let's start with, how does a person actually research astrology?
Sure. I mean, my focus is going back to the source texts in order to do translations of texts that we don't have access to, because there's a lot of material from 100 years ago or 200 or 300 or sometimes even 2,000 years ago that astrologers have never read. And recently, some astrologers have started going back and doing translations of these texts and finding that there were many techniques and doctrines that had been lost and that were very useful. So the starting point is learning ancient languages and then just starting to translate texts.
And how has that process been for you?
It's been interesting. I mean, originally I found myself resistant to the idea of studying older forms of astrology because of the sort of preconceived notion that perhaps it would be outdated or no longer useful, or that modern astrology had somehow evolved and gotten rid of the things that it didn't need. But in point of fact, in most instances, because of the history of astrology is so long, there's many techniques that simply weren't transmitted or that were lost during the course of the transmission. And so that process of going back and looking at old texts has really made me realize that, you know, there's still things to be gained from some of the older forms of astrology, and that astrology today is not at the peak or the height of evolution, so to speak. Yeah.
And so what ancient language are you learning?
Ancient Greek is my primary focus, since that's where the majority of the texts were from about 2,000 years ago, from the Roman period. That's really the source of Western astrology.
So what I find really interesting with you and what I really love about your presence is that there are different types of astrologers, right? There's an astrology for everybody. And you see a lot of astrologers who approach what we do with a new age sort of, not to in any way be negative, but, you know, like touchy-feely, they call it. But for you, it seems very left brain, like you're coming at it from a place that has detachment and rationality. So how do you feel about these different perspectives or approaches to astrology? And has it been a choice? Is it your disposition that allows you? And how do you merge that? Because astrology is, in a way, divination. And you are coming at it from a place that is much more linear. Right? So how do you understand all this?
I mean, I'm interested in being inclusive in terms of studying the way that different astrologers look at and perceive and conceptualize astrology. And in doing so, and in sort of acknowledging and studying the different ways that astrologers tend to do things and the wide spectrum of belief and approaches, that tends to put me in more of a neutral point of view, because after studying so many, you eventually come to a place that's somewhere sort of in between. So that's kind of the approach I tend to take, and I think in studying many different astrological sources and doctrines and traditions, you can sort of get to what the core is that unites or brings all of them together, so that's sort of my approach, is studying all of them, but sort of taking more of a neutral approach. Evidence, or maybe you could say characterize it as an empirical approach to studying astrology.
And so you said you're interested in considering the core that unites them. What have you uncovered in that regard?
I would say that a lot of it, when it goes back to when you get rid of many of the beliefs or philosophical or religious presuppositions, a lot of the core things that it goes back to is just basic astronomical observations, like what we can see when we look at the sky, and what astronomical movements or phenomenon are sort of just there and are something that no matter where in the world you grow up or where you're born, that you would see the same thing and have the same experience. So for example, one of those is the cycle of day and night, and the fact that the sun rises and culminates and sets each day. And each culture sort of has a similar approach to conceptualizing that cycle. So looking at cycles like that and how different cultures conceptualize them is one of the access points for seeing the ways in which different cultures sort of have similar views about astrology when you take away all of the external things.
And so you have a couple of fascinating websites. Tell us about your websites.
My main website is HellenisticaStrology.com, where I'm organizing and I collect together materials for the translations of ancient texts. And I have a directory where I'm writing up detailed biographies for each of the ancient astrologers, as well as links to free resources for each of those astrologers, so where you can find texts and translations of their works, as well as just what's known of their life or what research has been done into the techniques that their texts contain. So that's really my main website, is HellenisticaStrology.com. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you do, because I do think that it is those as yourself, who are motivated as yourself, that allow us to preserve a sense of our history and also allow us to have this deep respect for what we do as well, because we understand it as part of a lineage that we are connected to. And so you keep that alive. Thank you so much. And I know that it's been a while. I've been trying to get Chris on my show for a while now. And so I'm so glad it came together. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for being here to celebrate Chris Brennan with me. Until we connect again, take care.